I'm going to have my dad address this one. Do you think the formation of Israel was fair? And that the Zionist immigrants overpowered the existing population in the early 1900s to further their agenda?
There are two interesting words in that question. The first one is fair, and the second one is overpowered. Did the Jewish people overpower the existing population? Let's look at fair first. First of all, fair is a very subjective term. Not only that, but in Hebrew, the language of the Jews, there is no such word as fair. It does not exist. In fact, in Israel today, in modern Hebrew, if they want to say fair, they use the word fair, the English word. But in Judaism, the word fair does not even exist. There is a third word that was used in that question that actually bothers me, and that is agenda, because the author of that question is saying that it appears that the Jews had an agenda to take over the Arabs or depopulate the country. And that's completely wrong, because there was no centralized Jewish government or any Jewish political group that came up with an agenda to get rid of anybody. It happened over time. There were 5 different aliyahs where people came out of Europe, dating back to the beginning of Zionism in the late 1800s. And over those 5 periods that ended with World War II, the beginning of World War II, a tremendous population of Jews came out of Europe and moved to the land of Israel for safety. Okay, and that's one of the reasons, by the way, that the British had begun to support during that period the idea of having a Jewish homeland. They offered it to the Jews in Uganda and other places, but they realized that's not going to work. Okay, that there's been a continued presence of Jews in the land of Israel forever, even though the population at some periods was very small. But the major group that really changed things was after Israel was declared a state. 22 Arab countries kicked the Jews out of their countries. They allowed some small numbers in Egypt and Cairo. There were some small numbers in Tunisia. There were some in Iraq and Iran. But for the most part, they kicked out the Jews. Nobody asks about that. Okay, a tremendous number were kicked out. I believe the number is over 1 million were kicked out. And the majority of those ended up coming to Israel from places like Morocco and Yemen and Algeria and Saudi Arabia, just wherever. They came to this land. And these are people who were Sephardic Jews, or what we call Mizrahi, Eastern, or dark-skinned, very different than the Europeans. And they didn't necessarily get along with the European Jews. But for sure, there was no agenda. The Sephardic Jews did not agree with the European Ashkenazic Jews. There was no political agenda. And at the same time, there was an ongoing presence of Christians in this country that had never left, that were still holding on and taking care of the Christian sites. And there was also a large Arab population. But it wasn't a unified Arab population. It was very clannish and very separatist. I urge the author of that question and everybody to look up the definition of the word Zionism. Look in the Webster Dictionary, go online, go to Wikipedia. It is the desire for a return of the Jewish people to their native homeland where they have a historical connection. There's no political agenda to get rid of Christians or Arabs or Muslims per se, because don't forget there's also a lot of Christian Arabs, all right? Or the Druze people who live here and join the army. There's no political agenda whatsoever. Zionism has nothing to do with politics. It's a desire to return to a Jewish homeland and establish a Jewish country for the safety of the Jews.